Despite being the class clown my entire life, I have always been drawn to tragedy. For reasons I couldn't quite articulate, sorrow resonated with me far more deeply than any other emotion. A happy ending carries hope, sure, but sad endings, they hold depth, nuance, something almost sacred in the way they illuminate why we humans persist and endure, even while knowing the inevitability of our story's end. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Neverland Book Club. Today we're taking another deep dive. Who knows if these videos actually resonate with my audience or readers in general, but they keep me up at night, so thanks for being here. It's 4 a.m. I began researching this phenomenon because I wanted to know if there was an underlying reason some of us gravitate towards tragedy over comedy. What basic need are we fulfilling when we can't help but fall in love with tragic stories? So much so that we tend to romanticize character suffering, or at least I do anyway, sometimes. And what I found was that if you're anything like me, this attraction to melancholy might actually be psychologically sophisticated. I brought references, so let's get into it. First, like with any psychological deep dive, we must go back a couple thousand years. Because like most of life's quandaries, this concept has already been questioned and answered. In Poetics, written around 530 BCE, Aristotle proposed that tragedy serves an essential purpose. The Greek word katharsis means to cleanse or to purify. His argument was that tragedy stirs emotion of pity and fear, and through such stirring offers relief, as though the story draws something out of us that was left waiting to be released. Aristotle believed the pleasure of tragedy was not in spite of the pain it caused, but due to it. And the fact that scholars have debated his theory for centuries feels like proof enough that he was onto something. But there's a contradiction at the center of his argument. Pity and fear are uncomfortable emotions. We spend most of our waking lives trying to avoid them, and yet people seek out tragedy willingly, repeatedly. They left the theater not depleted, but somehow restored. Aristotle elegantly explains how experiencing these emotions through story creates just enough distance to make them survivable. You are witness, not victim. And in that survivable space, something resolves itself. What you carried into the theater feels lighter when you walk out. And I'm not talking about those snacks you snuck in. I find this fascinating because I think we do the same thing when we pick up a devastating novel, and why mood readers, such as myself, gravitate towards such novels after a particularly heavy day. We're not punishing ourselves, we're looking for somewhere to put our devastation. It's self-care, really. We all have grief we've yet to process, fears we can't seem to put down, desires we don't know where to place. Stories give us somewhere to live for a short time, and sometimes when you turn the music off, walk out of the theater, close the book, you feel something difficult to name, but unmistakably profound. Aristotle only takes us so far. His framework was built for theater, a shared emotional experience in an isolated space. And this is a book channel, so what happens when it's just you and a paperback at 2 in the morning, completely undone by the loss of a fictional character? Enter modern psychology. One James Gross, a Stanford psychologist, has done foundational work on emotion regulation and how we manage what we feel. He distinguishes between two strategies, reprisal and suppression. Reprisal reframes an emotional situation before the feeling fully lands, and suppression pushes the emotion down after it's already arrived. We're all familiar with that one. And what his research suggests is that, shocker, suppression doesn't work. Emotion doesn't simply disappear. It relocates somewhere harder to see. Reprisal, on the other hand, changes the experience itself, which is exactly what a good, sad story does. It gives you a frame to work with. You're not experiencing loss directly. Instead, you're encountering it from a safe distance. One where your body can sit with it without feeling the full weight of reality pressing down. Like practice, you're repraising the emotion in real time. And when you emerge from a devastating final page, something has genuinely moved through you in a way avoidance never allows. In this study, published by the Journal of Communication by researchers Mary Beth Oliver and Anne Rainey in 2011, we consume entertainment for two distinct reasons. Hedonic motivation being the pursuit of pleasure, enjoyment, and distraction, and eudaimonic motivation, where we crave meaning. Eudaimonic motivation pulls us more towards reflection. Stories that ask uncomfortable questions about love, morality, sufferance. In this study, they explored how people actively seeking meaning gravitate towards sad, complex, and emotionally demanding content. This kind of experience was associated with feeling deeply moved, gaining insight, and sitting with an appreciation for life more fully afterward. Sadness was not a side effect of the content consumed. It was the point. And I believe it goes even deeper still. This 2016 study from Durham University focused on music found that people who were most moved by sad art scored significantly higher in trait empathy. Specifically, they scored high on what researchers call the fantasy subscale, the ability to step into someone else's emotional world, be it real or fictitious. Being absolutely wrecked by grief due to a novel isn't dramatic, it's empathetic. These researchers described the emotional state not as pure sadness, but as being moved, a complex blend of both sorrow and pleasure at once. If you've ever sobbed through a book you loved, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This book made me cry for 3 days straight, and I haven't been able to eat or sleep or speak to anyone since. You should read it, 5 stars. Now, I want to go over something I found in this psychological spiral of mine called narrative transportation, a concept introduced in the year 2000 by Green and Brock, explaining the experience of being so completely absorbed in a story, imagery, emotion, and attention all merge so fully. The narrative world begins to feel more real than the room you're reading it in. And if you're an imaginary reader like me, you know exactly what this transportation may feel like, akin to magic. Research shows that the more transported one becomes, the more they may feel what the characters are experiencing, leaving more room for emotional logic and the chance to feel subtly changed after. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I'm taken by a story so earnestly, it leaves me slightly a different person than it found me. Not so dramatically, but also not always in a way I can articulate easily. It's as though an epiphany takes place about loss or love or whatever it may be. It feels far more keen than trivial. And I would argue that means far more than deeming it as simple entertainment. Now, if you've watched probably any one of my videos, you know it's difficult for me to not get sentimental when it comes to talking about stories and books and writing and art that moves me so much. I'm reminded of the breath in my lungs. But there's a difference between being moved by sadness and being attached to it. We can find meaning in grief and still refrain from making it our entire identity, I'd hope. Tell me if it's the same for you, but when I sit with something like A Little Life or Anna Karenina, it feels as though everything else around me softens. The world falls away, my surroundings become quieter, my tea tastes more rich. I am romanticizing. Yes, I am the main character of my story after all. But I think more than that, I'm surrendering myself temporarily to an experience outside of me, so that I may return to my body perhaps a bit more whole. It's transformative, cathartic, honoring what this pain teaches us, acknowledging its presence, and thanking it on its way through our bodies so we may remember such a human experience as this. So, what does this say about you? If you gravitate towards misery porn over happy endings, you're not dramatic or too sensitive or too much. Though that might be the case, I don't know you. But at the same time, it may mean you have a higher capacity for empathy, for all the reasons that make literature matter in the first place. If you know of any truly devastating stories, please do share them in the comments below. My first book was a romance. The happily ever after was necessary for marketing purposes. But this next one I'm currently writing is a tragedy inspired by the OG emo boy tragedy character himself, Hamlet, loosely inspired. Until then, some recommended sad girl reads you may or may not enjoy include The Karamazov Brothers by Fyodor Dostoevsky, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I recently watched that 2-hour and 15-minute film and cried for all of 2 hours and 14 minutes of it. Of course, there's Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, and honestly, I feel like this list is impossible for me because it just goes on forever. But if you're interested in widening your scope of human emotions, all the novels discussed today, including every study or article mentioned, will be linked in the description down below. Alright, that's all I have for you today, dear viewers. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like this video if you liked it and subscribe if you're not. Today's shout out goes to this comment here left by KJ Coleman Composer. This is truly my objective with this whole channel, especially recently thinking more critically about what I'm reading, what I'm writing. Whether you're a writer yourself or a reader, whether you read 100 fiction novels a year or strictly read philosophical or other scientific studies, we're all here to better ourselves and keep learning. In your own words, a universal concept that can be applied to all practices in life. So thank you for being here, and thank you for your comment. Alright, I'm off to go stock up on tissues and take all I've learned back to my writing chambers. Stay lost, keep reading. Goodbye!